Welcome back to FCTV. So here we go. My next guest is Kathryn de Wit. She is one of the leading voices shaping broadband policy in the U.S. As director of Pew's Broadband Access Initiative, she works with state and federal leaders, researchers, and communities to tackle one of the country's biggest challenges, making high-speed internet affordable and accessible for everyone. Kathryn, it's great to have you with us, and I can't wait to get into this conversation. This is my favorite dorky thing to talk about, which is how do we make internet, get the build out done, make it affordable to folks. This is like my heaven.
Yeah. I mean, considering where we are and all of the cool technology that's around us right now, I will take that as a very high compliment that,
yes.
Getting the job done on access is your favorite thing to discuss.
And I love to talk about policy. So the first thing, let's dig into the BEAD program.
Sure.
Okay. So just like at a high level, what is BEAD and like where are we now with it?
High level on BEAD, where are we now? And you want it high level and short, I'm sure.
Right, of course.
Yes. Okay. So the BEAD is a program that was authorized in 2021. It was established by the infrastructure bill. And its aim is to ensure that every American has access to high-speed, reliable, affordable broadband. And what's different about this program is not only the fact that we are supposed to be getting to every American that doesn't have access. It's also a program that's administered by state broadband offices. So the federal government is responsible for the overall oversight of the program. Funding is distributed down to the states. There have been a couple of fits and starts in getting money moving and out the door. There was a multi-year planning process. Again, remember, we're getting to every single household. So that requires a lot of data, requires a lot of validation. And then there was a brief edit and rewrite of the program guidelines by the Trump administration that was released just over a year ago. And now we are finally seeing money moving and homes are coming online with funding that's been provided by this program. So it's exciting. We have momentum.
That's great. That's great. And it's like $42.5 billion.
Yes, thank you. That's an important thing to clarify. Yes, it is $42.5 billion. It is the single largest federal investment in broadband.
And also, one of the interesting things and like big deals about this was this program was going to be all about getting future-proof technology in the ground, fiber, right? I mean, that was sort of like the big thing when it came out the gate. You know, we've had lots of other programs throughout the history of the internet and with the FCC throwing money, stuff not really getting built, or, in the case of like, one of the last tranches of money, I think it was, I'm going to throw some acronyms out here because I can't remember what it was stood for, but the RDOF money.
Rural Digital Opportunity Fund.
Right.
This is a fun quiz game for us. Go ahead. Let's keep going.
So that, really, by the time they got the stuff in the ground, it was, or in the air or wherever it was outdated, right? So the whole thing about BEAD was that this was going to be sort of the big push to get it really done and get the future-proof technology, right?
Yes, exactly. And it was supposed to be this reliable, scalable technology. So we are building for the future rather than thinking about, okay, what do folks necessarily need today? And notably, to your point on some of the programs, the other federal programs that have moved a little bit slower, not only were their technology standards and speed and they didn't have reliability requirements, but their speed standards were lower. BEAD has a faster construction timeline. So it actually looks more like state-funded programs that have existed in the past. It's a 4-year construction timeline from the time the states are actually awarded their funding. So for Louisiana, for example, which was one of the first states to break ground on a BEAD-funded network, they have 4 years from start to finish in order to actually build it and then get folks online.
Okay. But it sounds like a year ago, when Trump came into office, he threw a bit of a monkey wrench into the process, right?
So I mean, this is the joy of politics, right? Is that you have administrations change over, new folks come into office, and sometimes the priorities shift. But what we saw just over a year ago was a fairly significant rewriting of the program. And while 66% of BEAD-funded locations will still receive fiber, we did see a significant that anticipated number was much higher before these program rewrites were put into place. So not only were states and their ISP partners forced to go through a complete redesign, rebid of project locations, resubmit. They basically redid several years of planning work in about 90 days.
Oh, man.
Yes. And yes, I think that's the appropriate response.
I'm sure that's exactly what people in those broadband offices were saying. Oh, man.
Oh, man. It was.
And probably some other words.
Probably some other words. I will say, I don't think they had the most fun summer in 2025. They worked a lot, but they got it done. And I think that's one of the remarkable things about state broadband offices is that they are so much closer to the problem. And over the last couple of years, through both BEAD and other federal broadband programs, including the Capital Projects Fund, these states have built a lot of expertise and capacity and technical know-how that have demonstrated that they are capable of moving quickly and adapting to local markets, and as well as adapting to changing federal circumstances. So that's, I think, one of the really exciting things for folks, especially who are members of this association, to watch is the role of the states moving forward.
Yeah, that does sound cool. But there must have been like ripple effects and maybe some problems created by trying to do some of the work over and do it quickly. And so what have we seen? Like has it created other kinds of barriers or exacerbated barriers?
I think that's a both and.
Okay.
I think the biggest takeaway from it is the uncertainty.
Well, what do you mean by uncertainties?
The uncertainties in were they going to receive funding? So you actually had states that had plans that were approved by the previous administration.
Okay.
And were waiting on the final sign off from administrators inside the federal government. Those were put on hold when the new administration took office. You had states that were quite literally in the middle of reviewing program and project proposals from ISPs and their partners when this new guidance was delivered by the Trump administration. So it became this sort of like all these questions of, well, what's still eligible, what's not? Are we still partners? It lowered the cost per passing requirements in a way that then also injected some uncertainty as to whether or not providers could really afford to build out these networks. And as a result, that's where we're left with about roughly $20 billion of quote unquote leftover funding from these savings that had originally been allocated to really help ensure that future-proof and scalable technologies were delivered to the majority of recipients.
So it sounds like some providers, to, I guess, lower the cost, are because the standard was lowered, they didn't put in the fiber.
Yes.
Okay.
And so we're seeing and this was always a technology neutral program. I think that's really important for folks to understand, but there were preferences for fiber. And those were intentional preferences because the government has spent tens of billions of dollars on broadband technology that is not capable of meeting modern needs. So we can't on one side talk about the importance of broadband when it comes to economic development and this country's national security, but then also underinvest in the telecommunications network.
Right. Like it's like, what if the government had said, we're just going to make I-95 single lane. It doesn't matter. It's a road. It goes from Florida to Maine.
Sure.
But, people can just wait.
Yes. And I think that and so one of the benefits of BEAD was that it was supposed to, the way that the law was written was that it was supposed to preference the scalable technology, and there's no such thing as one and done. We all know that,
right?
But it was supposed to eliminate the need to go in and upgrade networks within 5 to 10 years,
right?
And
so I'm going to put you on the spot here. Yeah. Do you think that was primarily done to, in terms of the rules being rewritten to help out Trump's friend Elon Musk and Starlink?
I think that there was a perception that there was too much preference for fiber and that it is too expensive to connect that many Americans to the service.
Okay.
So,
okay. All right. So, but there are challenges that this probably has exacerbated, like the workforce and that's been a bottleneck, right? I mean, are there enough workers to be able to build these networks? And now it sounds like everybody's going to be building really in a hurry because they've got like these 4 years to do it. Like, are there enough people to build the networks?
That's a great question. We have research coming out on this soon. We published a piece last fall talking and examining the question of the workforce shortage. And right now we have many of the states will be starting to roll out their funding at the same time. So that's not only going to heighten demand for workers, that's going to heighten demand for supply as well. But there are expected labor shortages. And the first thing that we are recommending state broadband offices do is go back and revisit the worker assessments that they did several years ago as part of the planning process, and work with their ISPs, talk to their workforce development partners to figure out, is there a shortage? That's number one. If so, where are they seeing shortages? At what part of the construction pipeline? So, and that will look different across different states. So in some states, it may be they may have a shortage of splicers. In other states, it may actually be like truck drivers. So doing that assessment of what does their actual worker availability look like in the pipeline will be really important coming out of the gate as soon as they have certainty on when those funds will roll forward.
Well, it also seems like if you've got any kind of shortage, that could potentially drive up costs because you got to pay people more.
Potentially. But that's why I think the discussion on like what is the actual shortage is really important. So get specific around what are those workers that are needed, where are they needed, and then figure out the impact on cost. But what we've learned through our research, and we know that FBA has also done a lot of research on this as well, is that there is more portability of credentials and skill sets between some of the telecommunications industry and other industries like HVAC, for example.
Okay.
So the other piece of advice and recommendation that we give to policymakers is not only assess the need quickly, but also you don't need to start from scratch. There are a lot of existing programs and certifications out there. Additionally, there may be more labor force that's available, but they may just be working in different fields. So look to these existing programs, including some that FBA have produced, in order to figure out like where can they quickly train people to get them ready for these roles and get them into roles quickly. Because what you don't want to do is institute like a year-long, 2-year-long training process. Then you're too far behind in the pipeline. So they don't need to start from scratch, and there are existing experts and organizations that they can turn to quickly get these folks trained and to work.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So let's pivot a little bit here and talk about the states. I mean, it sounds like the BEAD program has really kind of, in a way, juiced the activity of states, kind of given them more input and I don't know, has it forced them to kind of up their game in terms of having internet development and thinking about internet development, or were they already doing that pre-BEAD?
It's both.
Okay.
So many states leading up to 2019 were already investing in, and they had their own broadband programs. When the American Rescue Plan Act, which was the first major federal stimulus, when that was passed in 2021 in response to COVID, about half of states had broadband offices at that point. That's where the Capital Projects Fund was funded. It's a $10 billion program that states are also responsible for administering for broadband access. But then when the infrastructure bill was passed later that year, that's where we really saw the rest of the states close the gap and get their broadband offices up.
Well, it must have been like COVID must have been a big wake-up call.
It did.
Yeah.
It was not only a wake-up call in recognizing what the connectivity gaps were, and where it wasn't just availability, it was also affordability, it was also access to devices. That was a significant wake-up call for state policymakers, but it was also a wake-up call, or perhaps a call to action for them, that a lot of frustration that had already existed with federal broadband programs, and how slowly they moved. In many cases, how they were passing over rural communities in particular. There was just a lot of simmering frustration with state lawmakers who said, we don't want to wait for the feds to fix this anymore. And that's what had contributed to a growth in state broadband programs leading up to COVID, but COVID really supercharged that.
So do you also think that, I mean, I'm sure I'm not the only one who would say this, but there's some dysfunction in the federal government in the last decade, a lot of swings between parties and what policies. Do you think that there's an element of that where states are kind of like, look, we can't count on the federal government to like even do anything? We got to like look out for ourselves?
We're seeing at Pew across the board. We focus on state policy, not just state broadband policy, but we are seeing a shift back towards states and states taking the reins on things because of the volatility at the federal level. But what is remarkable, I think, about the BEAD program in particular is that it has been a significant investment in state capacity and leadership on broadband policy. And because BEAD will really narrow the availability gap in a way that we have not experienced before. The program isn't perfect. There will still be unconnected locations at the end of this program. That's kind of just the nature of growth. But now what we also have are 56 state and territory broadband offices who have the expertise, technical know-how, who can then carry that work forward, but from a very localized perspective, because they understand what their community needs, they understand what their communities need, they understand what their local ISPs need, and are better able to marry solutions that work best for both parties. So what we're seeing now is this. Why not continue this idea of continuing to bolster and support the capacity of those offices so that way they can work responsibly with their local partners?
Okay. So to kind of wrap things up here, if we meet again in 10 years, which I hope we meet before then.
I hope so too.
But in 10 years, let's say we're back here at this conference and what are we, and let's say BEAD, we get the connectivity to everybody. What is going to be the next big policy barrier or thing that you think we'll be talking about in 10 years?
We'll still be talking about access because there will always be new locations to connect. We'll still be talking about how do we upgrade legacy networks in order to make sure that they can keep pace with modern technology. And that's a good thing, right? We still want the policy framework in place to support that ongoing growth. Affordability, though, is really going to be the thing that we have to focus on moving forward. And that's for two reasons. The first is that research has been clear that consumers don't see the economic benefits of access just by virtue of a broadband network passing in front of their home. They really need to be able to use it. And what's the biggest barrier to folks getting online? It's price. So making sure that those connections, if we want folks to be able to use these for social and economic benefit, we need to make sure that those connections are affordable. Then we need to talk about skills and devices. But it's also about the sustainability of the networks themselves. So this is a business proposition. When we're talking about affordability, it's making sure that those customers can afford those connections so it reduces churn. It actually helps keep money flowing into the network and then supports network operations and maintenance in the long term.
Right, because those guys have to be in business to be able to
Correct.
Deliver the service.
Yes, exactly. So we want to be able to serve both things here.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Kathryn. Just as I predicted, this was a really great conversation. I enjoyed it. I hope you did too.
I did. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So thank you for being on FCTV, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, bye.